Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to review and approve minutes.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the minutes of October 10, 2023.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item is to sign bills.
No bills.
We have no bills. Okay, we're on to meetings and hearings. First, I'm going to announce the ones that have been continued and postponed. So, the ANRAD for 33-69 Green Street has been continued to November 21st. 36 Sewell Street, Lot 1, 2, 3, and 4, been continued to November 21st. 170 Hartford Turnpike has been continued to November 21st, and 276 Green Street has been continued to November 21st. And 779 Hartford Turnpike has been postponed to November 21st. Okay, our first meeting is a continued public hearing regarding notice of intent filed by Lisa and Stephen Turnblom, 199 Gulf Street, Shrewsbury, for the construction of a single-family home, septic, and stormwater system at 195 Gulf Street.
Are you able to hear us through this? Yes? Thank you, I wasn't sure. Good evening, Conservation Commission. Glenn Kowalski from EBT Environmental, Mr. Steve Turnblom, owner of the Gulf Street properties, which some of you have seen in the past. It's been going on since '94. This is the last house lot that Mr. Turnblom owns. I'm not sure if it can be put on the screen.
Yes, let me see if I can.
Thank you. We're working with the comments by DEP. Tim Roth in both alternative analysis and the wetland replication to prove that it will function by showing that at the final cut, we will have hydric soils within 12 inches of the final grade. It's adjacent to an existing wetland. And we also, Mr. Grenier, we've been in discussions with him and talking about the 50-foot offset, which the house presently meets, the septic system where it is, and that there is a 20-foot setback from septic, and how the town in its 25 years has not seen a variance from the front yard setback, and that the septic only can go in a position, do we have a pointer? Do you have a laser pointer? No.
There might be one on the,
On the remote?
One of these, maybe?
perhaps.
I don't,
No, I don't think
I
so.
don't think so, no.
I'll just describe it by talking about, there's no north, at least right here, there's no north-south, but it's easy enough to say that we're standing on Gulf Street, if we don't mind. I know Mr. Jakes one time on the Walnut Street project criticized me for using right and left, but it does work as long as everybody knows you're standing on the road facing in. And so anyways, on the left-hand side of the lot, as we can see, that's the septic system, there's the holding tanks. In front of the house, there's the house 50-foot back, meeting the front yard setback. And we will present this along with our alternative analysis as we've done a preliminary work on that alternative, but that there is no other location that, otherwise we do not, there is no Title V provision for new construction in lessening the setbacks from from the house. So that they'll squeeze us in with the 20-foot setback if we push the house any further forward. Mr. Grenier is saying that we would then violate the septic system setback, and also that in his 25 years, he has not seen a variance from front yard setback. That being said, we also have, that is all gonna be presented to the commission and to DEP, because in most recent times, anytime we have questions by DEP, we don't just submit them to the Conservation Commission, we submit them to DEP in case, as what just occurred on one in Millbury, the commission closed the hearing and DEP didn't agree because they didn't see the revisions in time. And so there was an appeal, but that's been worked out. So from now on, we submit everything to DEP and the commission. And the main thing, I believe, what the commission is, after proving 3 times, and we can show through minutes and through the permits we have, Westbrook in 96, and other things in August 96 became, riverfront regulation came into the reg. And we proved 3 times in order to put in 3 houses, and they would be called, and you do have a copy of this, but we're gonna blow it up and put it on a 2x3 so everybody can see it, and the DEP, that as we go down Mr. Turnbloom's main driveway, there's a house to the right, that it's called Lot 1. It was permitted in '04, sold in '05. We proved it was intermittent, the brook at that time. Then, on the back lot that Mr. Turnbloom owns, we permitted in '07, Lot 8, and proved that it was intermittent. I did the photos twice at the lowest point of the lot, 200 feet down gradient of this property, which would be south. And then one other time, we proved that it was intermittent. In '99, we did Lot 3, sold in '10, and proved then again that this was intermittent. So in the meantime, as proving it's intermittent, for 3 years, the order is good, and the brook then would be determined to be intermittent, because once you prove it, it's shown on a plan, that it's intermittent at that lowest point, which is where this stream stat was taken, that's what this X is on the stream. So then we sold off lots also during this period, because we did not see the need, or Mr. Turnbloom did want to sell them. We built on them, we sold them, and we have 1 lot left, but it was sold during a period when this brook was determined to be intermittent. The argument now is, well, you have to use those lots that you sold off in the alternative analysis. Well, if they were proven that they were intermittent, well, then we wouldn't use them in the alternative analysis. if we sold off lots when the brook was proven 3 times that it was intermittent, we wouldn't need to hold on to the lot because the brook was intermittent. This will be discussed more in detail with DEP, as we see it as a problem with the way the language is in the wetland regulation, and if it has to go to an ALJ, it will, that you can't be held at fault for selling off property, maybe not thought of back in '96 when it was finally approved, the riverfront regulation, but how can you be held at fault for selling off property when the brook is not perennial? So, if that's case is one, we have only one other lot that we don't own out of all this development. And if the DEP had, if there was a case that DEP did not agree, that it would say, well, you should have kept that lot that you sold while it was intermittent, and that would be an alternative lot. This will be in detailed language, and we would hope, as in the last one we presented, that the whole report is read by everybody on the board. That's only one alternative. We know that you only meet once a month, so we will be asking, if the commission so indulges us, for one continuance to hopefully close the hearing, we'll be asking, in 1 month, after we present all the rest of our documentation. We have asked one more time for the staff to, through public records law, to go back and find the Steve Turnblom, all of the files. We are also going through boxes of photographs, and this is another way that we will see that we can prove that we don't have a riverfront here, would be, as we'll have a site inspection in 2 days, and I know it's 2 separate projects, but the project across the street will be determined by DEP if old documentation, as the law does say, within any year, you can show the photos for 4 days in 12-month period. We will, if DEP, again, concurs with what they originally thought when they gave us no comment in the file number sheet across the street, we will use that same documentation here to say, never mind did we sell off all lots when this was intermittent and build on those lots when it was intermittent. We can also bank on that the photos that we took are still valid because the regulation says in any 12-month period. If the law was looking for in any 3-month period, any 3-year period, any 4-year period, any 2-year period, it would have stated it. And as I stated to DEP on my last time I won one of these in Charlton, how many times do you have to prove something is intermittent? Again, if the law was meant to be changed and it was climate change and people thought that there was a reason to change the law like they did in 12/2002 when they beefed up the riverfront regulation from 2006, it was only revised once for as far as 1058. They did bring it up to snuff, more detail, and we would agree that any photos prior to 06 probably won't be used. But anything after 06, 12/2002, when the law was written then, and is it the same as it is now, in any 4 days within a 12-month period, any year, we would then say we have no river. That is only one hurdle to overcome on this project. We do know that DEP wants us to prove that the replications will work. I said that at the beginning. We will put together a scenario showing that there's hydric soils within 12 inches of the final cut, as we've already augured them, and we have the data of the soils showing that the final cut will be. I just made 2 wetland replications today, one in Sturbridge and one in Charlton. We do them all the time. And so anyways, we will prove that the replication areas will work, and we will follow the other comments that Kim Roth has on here, and it will all be detailed at a minimum within 2 weeks, so you'll have 2 weeks to review prior to the next meeting. We appreciate you listening. We'll, any questions that the board has, we'll take. Otherwise, we're going to be asking for a continuance to your next meeting.
Diane?
Yeah, I do have a question. There has been a fair amount of building in this area. You can see it here. And that may have changed the water table. And is it possible that this is no longer an intermittent stream?
Could I answer through the chairman?
Yes.
this question came up at the last time I was across the street. Unfortunately, as in many conservation commissions, the documentation goes in and I think, is not disseminated to the rest of the board. That was all answered on the appeal for across the street. The development upstream is in Sewell Brook drainage. It is not in this drainage. That's one thing. We showed the entire drainage divide of Sewell going on 140 in Westbrook coming in this direction. That is not in our drainage basin. Beyond that point, as I said during that meeting, and I just said it earlier, if the four section chiefs, which meet once a month at DEP wetlands, decide that they think that the regulation should be changed, because whether NOAA's saying that a 100-year storm event now is 8 inches instead of 7, and that still hasn't even been changed. We just did a 600-car parking lot for Central Mass Auto Auction, and that has not changed even though NOAA's saying 8. So when these laws, when our regulations are changed, like they did on 12/2002, then we will take into consideration, as anybody reviewing the 310 CMR 10, Chapter 131, Section 40, if they look at the regulations, we only look at the regulations and we deal with the regulations as they're written, not hypothetically what they might be, or that there's climate change. And if the wisdom of the four section chiefs comes into play and they say it's time to change the reg, then we should see the change in the reg. But presently, we have not seen the change in the reg. But also, as you stated earlier, you have not seen my complete documentation on the drainage divide, and that is not in our drainage divide.
Okay, so my question will remain, though, simply because if it is no longer intermittent, then that is important to know. So,
100%.
thank you.
Thank you.
You all set? Martha?
I'm set for now, thank you. I look forward to reading more.
Thank you.
Jason?
All set.
Thank you.
All set.
I have
No.
one question with regards to the DEP comments.
Yes, sir.
It's, and I'm asking staff right now, a peer review of the flood study. What is,
The status of that?
are we doing that, or how does that work?
We didn't do it for the
Okay.
previous project.
Okay.
It was done by a professional, engineer, so, the commission wishes to have it peer reviewed, we can.
Well, the only reason I'm asking, because it's mentioned in
Mhm.
here, I mean, would that be something that we'd be able to do?
I mean, certainly it was submitted as part of the application, so it's.
So there's part of the DEP comments was a peer review of the flood study. What are your comments on that?
Mr. Rob McNeil Engineering had done the first study for Mr. Turnblom. We found it not up to snuff. We went to CMG out of Sturbridge to bring it up to grade for this project particularly. But then, through Mr. Grenier, he took what we had already done, and brought it into the 55 and over study and that's where that new stormwater, 100-year floodplain study was supposedly, well, it was beefed up, it was detailed, and we'll have to ask Mr. Grenier on whether the planning board or FEMA finally did a detailed study of the detailed study.
Well, maybe that's something to consider.
I will-
If we were to request a peer review of that flood study, would that be acceptable to you?
If I could.
Yeah?
I would first, and I will work on this within the next 7 days, to see if there's been a study by Graves or somebody, I would take it that the 55 and over,
There was a study done.
a
Is that a-
study of
They
the
needed
study.
that done to approve that over 55 development off of Cypress.
There it is. And
That included our land abuts that included the whole area there,
So-
that watershed.
thank you, sir.
So if we were to have our engineer do a peer review of that, would you
I
be amenable to that?
probably, I would first like to, if I could, get the study that was done and see who did it, and see if it then meets your engineer, Mr. Truman's grade, and then say, if it doesn't, sure, peer review study. I think we should see who studied it, not the first study, who did the study, but who studied the
I
study.
understand. All right.
I mean, the other thing, Mr. Chairman, is that they're actually going to FEMA right now for Loma, for a map change. So, I mean, FEMA did have some minor comments on the
So you
calculation.
did,
So if FEMA accepts it, then
Okay.
maybe that's.
All right, that's
pretty
fair
good.
enough.
But they did have some comments on it. I don't know if they've been addressed yet.
we appreciate that, thank you.
All right, Aaliyah and Andy, do you have any other comments?
At this point now?
Anybody in the audience have any comments? So you're asking for a continuance?
We please ask for a request to continue to your next meeting, and to get more information to the board.
Okay, our next meeting's November 21st. Thank you.
November 21st?
Yes,
Thank you, sir, very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeez.
This one? All right.
I think it's the new one,
Are you
right?
ready?
Okay, I'm
Okay,
ready.
Let's go.
We have a new public hearing. Notice is hereby given in accordance with the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, that Melitios D. Chacharoni, 1 West Boylston Street, Suite LL05, Worcester, has filed a notice of intent for the construction of 2 commercial buildings with parking, driveway, and commercial loading areas, as well as 2 stormwater BMPs at 369 Holden Street. And please correct my pronunciation of his name if I did not do it right.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chair. For the record, I'm Patrick Healy. I'm a civil engineer with Thompson Liston Associates, representing the Chacharoni family. How's that? So we're looking at a parcel of land that's approximately 14 acres in area, located between Holden Street and the northeast cutoff, the northwest corner of the town. The property has land in Worcester, West Boylston, and Shrewsbury, and we've proposed some work in Shrewsbury, which is before you this evening. There are a number of culverts on Holden Street that discharge runoff onto the subject property. That sort of all collects at the low end or the westerly side of the property, and then flows in a southerly direction. So there are some wetland resources on the property, including primarily bank, defining the flow path for that water. Although the soil's very sandy, there's no wetland soil present in those areas, just a path for water to flow in a southerly direction. And when you get to the southern end of the property, there is in fact some bordering vegetated wetland that's just off the screen to the right there. So what we're proposing is 2 lots, a 12,000 square foot building and a 50,000 square foot building. The 12,000 square foot building will be accessed from Holden Street. Essentially, the entire lot will have to be filled in order to meet the grades on that side of the site. That does allow us the opportunity to put an underground infiltration system, or 2 actually, one for the roof runoff and one for the parking lot runoff on that side of the property. Each of those has a discharge, an overflow discharge pipe that goes out to the water course on the west side. So on this plan that's on the screen, north is to the left, still oriented. You can see the separate boundary. So on the second building, the 50,000 square foot building, because it's a large footprint, we're trying to work with the grade to place that building. So essentially, we want to have the building on natural grade as much as possible, which sort of lowers our access point. So to get to this lot, we'll be proposing an access driveway off of Northeast Cutoff through the Worcester right-of-way and an intermittent stream crossing with a culvert in Worcester. So that project has been filed with the Worcester Conservation Commission. I have a public hearing coming up with them next week. So though if we continue on the 50,000 square foot building, to the south or the right of the screen there, you see a large infiltration basin, which primarily handles the roof runoff from this large building and the paved area on that end of the building, which would have loading docks. So this is designed as an infiltration basin. As I said, the soil on site is very highly permeable sand. We have done some test pits out there, although as Aaliyah pointed out, they're not exactly in the detention basin or the retention basin, so we will have to do some additional testing to confirm. What we know to be the case is that a relatively deep groundwater, highly permeable sand, which, in this particular area is well served to provide infiltration for such a large impervious area. It's not always the case where we're trying to, infiltrate a small amount and detain the rest of the runoff. In this area, we're able to infiltrate up to 6 inches of runoff before seeing overflow discharge to the wetlands. So we have developed an erosion and sediment control plan and a sequence of work. It's the next plan in the set after the grading and drainage, showing perimeter controls. And in the scope of work, in the notice of intent, we're describing the sequence of work, which includes clearing, grubbing, establishing some temporary settling basins if they're necessary. It's not likely that they will be, other than if we're creating soil stockpiles. And then the timing for the project, of course, the time is of the essence for the property owner. They expect to construct the 12,000 square foot building first, since they have a tenant waiting for that space. And then the 50,000 square foot building does not have a tenant yet, so that construction would lag after the first lot construction. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them. I know you do have some comments from DEP, and Aaliyah provided me with a comment letter last week while I was away, so I haven't had the opportunity to address those at this point.
Okay. Diane?
Yes. Okay. Bear with me as I think while I'm speaking, okay? First, can I ask what kind of businesses these are meant to be?
The 12,000 square foot building would be occupied by a commercial operation that's in the cable industry. The 50,000 square foot distribution center does not have a tenant yet, but it would be that small bump out you see on the left of the building would be some office space and a break room. The majority of the building would be a warehouse.
A warehouse,
Yes.
okay. So, there would be, trucks parking in that parking lot, right?
Through the chair, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Okay, so here goes. I have a question before a couple of other questions. One of the questions is, in the report that you put out, what I read, and I just don't understand it, so I'm just trying to understand, is that the proposed infiltration ponds will handle over 90% of all rain events, but they will not contain very intense storms such as the 100-year 24-hour storm over 7 inches of rainfall. Overflow pipes and spillways will be directed to riprap velocity attenuation pads at their outlets to protect the downslope from erosion. Okay, so is it standard to handle 90% of all rainfall events, but not the 100-year 7 inches of rainfall? Is that standard?
Through the chair, it's typical that we would only infiltrate up to 1 or 2 inches of rainfall, and then the remainder of the storms would produce runoff. In this case, because it's highly permeable sand, we're able to hold on site all of the events up to those, larger, extreme, or infrequent rain events.
Okay,
So I would say it's unusual to be able to have the opportunity to mitigate to such a large degree as we're doing here.
right, okay. Okay, so my next question is, cars and trucks parking here will inevitably drip oil and gas or diesel onto this impervious surface, and then there will be rain events. And so my question is, how will that be mediated?
Okay, through the chair, as part of the DEP stormwater standards, we're required to provide 80% of total suspended solids removal for parking lot runoff. That, in this particular case, includes deep sump catch basins with hoods, which would provide gross sand sedimentation and oils and some trash. And then there's a secondary treatment system proposed that's a hydrodynamic separator prior to each of the infiltration measures. So in that case, the stormwater comes in, it goes through a swirl chamber where it provides additional separation of floatables and finer particles prior to that being discharged to the stormwater system.
Okay, thank you very much.
You all set?
Mhm.
Martha?
I was looking for landscaping plans, loaming and seeding, what kind of seed mix, et cetera, you're using. I didn't find them on the plans. Can you elaborate?
Okay, we will be producing a landscaping plan prior to filing for site plan approval. It just hasn't been prepared at this point in time. Within the retention basin specifically, we have to use a type of seed mix that's suitable to survive in wet and dry conditions. So it's likely to have a high percentage of fescues.
So,
There will be, like I said, a comprehensive landscaping plan prepared. It's just not ready at this point.
so my recommendation and hope would be that you would look for a seed mix that was primarily native species, native wetland species for the infiltration basis.
Okay, well, actually, we don't want them to remain wet. How they do get inundated with water, but then they're designed to empty within 72 hours. So we really don't want to plant wetland species under that situation. So we want to have, grasses and low-growing, some could be native species, but we don't want to encourage wetland plants to move in and sort of seal up the bottom of those basins. It's got to be something that's regularly mowed to keep it clear.
Right, which is fine. There are rain gardens that are based on that principle of filling and then emptying within 24 to 72 hours. So my suggestion would be to look for native species, whether they're wetland or not.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All set? Jason?
Glenn, are you representing the applicant as well?
I'm the delineator of the wetlands,
Okay.
and I did the BVW data forms, so we looked at the bank and stream, so all the resource areas, they're mine, thank you.
Okay. No, that's it.
Chris?
Yeah, it's kind of related to what Martha was saying. So I see the paved area, I see the limit of work. So is that going to be just all plantings from the pavement to the limit of work?
It's likely a larger extent of it will be grass
Okay.
that would have to be mowed. There will be trees planted around the parking lot to provide shading in accordance with the town zoning bylaw.
Okay.
Patrick, a question with the culvert. I know the culvert's shown in Worcester, and looks like you're filling a wetland there.
It's not a wetland, as I said, it's a bank, so
Bank.
it's a passage of water. It's regulated as a wetland resource area, but it's not a BVW. So we have that application pending before the Worcester Conservation Commission. We're proposing a large three-sided culvert that's likely to be 12 or 14 feet wide, 3 feet high, and that will allow the 100-year flow to pass, but it also provides, a openness ratio and a span that complies with the stream crossing standards of DEP.
And, Mr. Question, why wouldn't you access to Holden Street? Is it a grading issue to go out to Holden Street, or what was that the issue?
It is a big issue, yeah. So for the 12,000 square foot building, as I said, we're accessing there off of Holden Street. Essentially, that entire lot has to be filled to bring it up to the Holden Street grade. There's probably a 15-foot difference between the two streets there, in between the buildings, between Holden Street and Northeast Cutoff. And Northeast Cutoff is continuing to slope down to the south. So it's very difficult to create a flat site if you have to meet that higher grade. So it works out best to come in at the low elevation. This is very close to the driveway we recently created for the Worcester school bus parking. You can see the driveway curb cut there
Okay.
to sort of put it in perspective where it falls. And I would like to point out that that part of Northeast Cutoff was actually graded out for a 4-lane road, although it was only built, half of the road was built in the 1960s. So that is all like imported fill material that's been graded. There's a drainage system already in there. So what we're left with is right at the edge of that fill, there's a flow path that goes down the whole side of that roadway. And that's where that culvert crossing would be located.
Okay. Andrew?
I mean, we've met with the applicants on the project. I mean, a couple of issues, not really wetlands related, but obviously there's no sewer there, but there also is no water. I mean, you're showing a water connection, but we don't have an intermunicipal agreement with Worcester for water. I think we made that clear.
So we have been in discussions with the Worcester Public Works Department.
Okay.
They do have a separate fee structure for service to properties that abut roads in Worcester that are not actually served in Worcester. So we're hoping to apply under that provision of their sort of out of
Okay.
district service.
'Cause that's not our understanding talking to them. But again, it's not,
That's-
it's not relevant to the wetlands.
So is it your understanding, Mr. Truman, that we need to,
Yeah,
somehow
Shrewsbury does
amend
not
it?
have an intermunicipal agreement with Worcester, so we can't allow it. We've already talked to them about it, so it will.
I guess we'll have further discussions.
Yeah, so it'll have to be a well, but then if we get into a well, this is also in our town zone too, for one of our town wells, so we have to be careful,
Okay,
so.
that's an issue that will be held.
Yeah, I think we've got a way to go, because obviously we have been coordinating with Worcester Concom, so we are not conflicting with each other, so.
Okay,
So, yes, Mr. Chair, I should point out both of these buildings are being served by private septic systems. We've done the soil testing. We have not submitted the septic systems to the Board of Health at this point for approval, but there is sufficient area and suitable soil conditions to allow that to go forward.
okay. Aaliyah?
It would be great if you could add the setbacks of those to the wetlands, to the plans. And then also adding I think it was the 15-foot no disturb buffer line, if you could add that to the plans.
Sure, as I said, I was away last week when you sent this, so I just had the opportunity to
Oh,
look
yeah.
at it yesterday, so
Yeah.
we'll address those comments.
Sure.
You were looking for some dimensions to various outfalls and so forth. We're happy to
Yes.
provide that.
Yeah. Yeah, getting also the distances of those outfalls, how big they'll be so that they are adequately catching any overflow that's occurring.
Okay, we have that information, so we can add that to a supplemental package.
Perfect, thank you.
What's that?
I think that's it.
Anybody in the audience have any questions? All right, there are none, so you'll be asking for a continuance,
Yes, sir, I would like to request a continuance to the commission's next meeting.
and you'll be, you'll be answering the staff questions and the DEP questions for that next meeting. Okay,
Yes, sir,
perfect. All right, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
We have a new public hearing. Notice is hereby given in accordance with the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, that Steve Corvo, 57 North Street, Shrewsbury, has filed a notice of intent for the demolition of an existing home and tennis court and the construction of a single-family home and associated grading, infiltration system, deck, and site work at 1719 Lantern Lane.
Good evening. Just for the record, Scott Morrison from Ecotech here with Steve Corvo, the applicant on this particular project. I've highlighted a plan here. So there's an existing single-family home on the property, essentially situated kind of in the middle of the property. There's also a substantial area of lawn around that, as well as an existing tennis court in this location here. Wetland resource areas consist of an area of bordering vegetated wetland, which flows through a culvert and drains to the south here. So we've got a 100-foot buffer zone here, which currently incorporates the existing tennis court and an area of lawn. Proposing to subdivide this into 2 lots, remove the existing house. Lot on number 17 will be completely outside the 100-foot buffer zone, with the minor exception that some work will be occurring to remove a portion of the tennis court and loam and seed that area. So that is an exempt activity under the Wetlands Protection Act, but we've included that in this application package. There'll be a proposed single-family house on number 19 with the rear portion within the 100-foot buffer zone. Also included is some grading. They'll also remove that existing tennis court, loam and seed, and make that into the rear yard. For erosion controls, the proposed hay bales and straw wattles wrapping around the rear of the property to protect the resource area. Also proposing construction entrances at the roadway. There's some stormwater features consisting of trench drains along the driveway and roof infiltration from the proposed roof of the single-family homes. That pretty much summarizes the project. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Diane,
I don't have any questions.
Martha,
I'm all set.
Jason,
I'm all set.
Chris?
No questions.
Scott, you're showing the erosion control barrier?
Yes.
What's on the other side towards the wetlands? Is that wooded? Is it grass? What is that?
There's a
now?
is a wooded fringe as it comes down towards the wetland here. I believe in this area, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's lawn back in through here a little bit.
It's,
Kind of a wooded,
it's kind of wooded, like there's some granite steps that go down from the back of the existing building that kind of get down into that area. But in the area where Scott pointed out where the wetland is, where the tennis court ends, there's a fence line, and then it's kind of like the top of slope, and then it just kind of, you know, when they graded out for the tennis court, they graded the tennis court, and then that all just grew in since.
So you're gonna limit your work within the confines of the hay bales? You're not gonna go outside of that?
nope,
Correct.
just outside that tennis court, so they'll remove any fencing and everything and leave everything on the inside of that. Just to give you dimensions, so we've got 31.8 feet, you know, to where the tennis court is here, so there'll be 30 feet of buffer zone through here. And then the house is 64.8 feet off that wetland in this corner, and the deck 57.4.
And one other question, I'm sure all your downspouts and everything are going into a recharge
Yep.
in both houses? Okay. Andy?
Just a couple of things. You haven't filed for the stormwater permit yet? Okay.
Not yet, no.
And then you haven't A&R'd the lots either? I couldn't find it.
No, it's actually, in terms of the lots, the lots are the same as they were in I don't have the exact year, it's a 1970-something subdivision. So essentially what happened was, they built the house on 2 lots. There was a couple doctors that bought both lots and built one house, so that house comes off, and no new property lines are proposed, same 2 lots as they were originally created.
Okay, good. I'm just looking at GIS because we just have it listed as 17. We don't have a 19. So we just need to check with the assessors, that's all.
Yep. Yeah,
'Cause otherwise,
we actually-
the deed's going to be, the order's going to be locked to both parcels if you don't have separate deeds.
I think that's probably okay, though, just because, I mean, you guys might answer better, but because there's that little bit of work on number 17 with the tennis court. So whatever you guys think, it seems like you probably have it on the entire parcel, right? Both lots?
Yeah, it's on the entire parcel. Keep in mind that 17, that work's exempt, so, you know, when it comes time, I'm sure the commission would issue partial certificates if you had to in the future as you're selling off those house lots, or just one certificate of compliance when you finish the entire project.
Yeah, just because we run into it all the time. It's down the road and then, you know.
It becomes an issue later on when we go to close things out, and it's just like one of those open-ended things that never gets finished.
I think all right, so if I understand it correctly, we have an order of conditions, it's over the entire piece of land, there's 2 houses on it. One could be sold before the other, and obviously will, because it's not gonna happen on the same day. If we don't have the certificate of compliance on the whole thing, then we would have something out.
Well, it's a bit confused because if you're going to sell them off as 2 separate deeds for each parcel, is the
Yeah,
one?
2 separate deeds.
Okay. I mean, I just didn't get a chance to dig into the registry and see how it's recorded, because we're showing it as one parcel. That's why it gets a little confusing.
Just need to clear that up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other than
Is
that,
that-
other than that, it's pretty straightforward, yeah, I don't think we have any big
You're
issues.
all right with that? Leah?
I think Martha
Oh,
has.
Martha?
As you're talking through this, it put into mind that sometimes when there is a lawn area, a homeowner looks to extend that lawn and gradually encroach into the wetlands. So is that a possibility here, or does the slope preclude that? And if no, would, usually there's, we ask people to put up a fence or boulders or something like that.
I think the slope probably precludes it. There's a fence there now. The fence is tall, like to keep tennis balls in. And for all intents and purposes, our limit of work is the fence line. It's kind of the same point, because after, behind the fence, it's wooded and drops off. So, there's really no benefit. I mean, you'd have to build a retaining wall to really get any, when they put the tennis court in, they built a tennis court and just sloped it off. So there's no easy way to really get closer to the wetlands there without a decent amount of work, walls.
Stranger things have happened, as you know.
Yeah, because from essentially from the tennis court grade down to the wetland grade, it's probably 4 or 5 feet. It's pretty steep, so you couldn't mow it with a lawnmower it's too steep for that.
But you could build up a retaining wall or some railroad ties and
Potentially.
backfill it.
But the
Yeah.
other thing to keep in mind too is with the order of conditions, any potential buyer will see that there's an order of conditions on the property. And that should alert them that there's wetland resource areas. And the wetlands here are pretty obvious.
Well, Martha has a point. Where you said there's a fence there already, are you going to keep that fence there in, or you're removing that fence?
We were planning on taking it out because we don't need it, but, I mean, we could leave a section along on that eastern side there just to leave.
That would
it
probably, if you
behind.
could leave a section on that lot 19 where the wetland is as a delineator, I mean,
Or alternatively, could they put
That's fine.
boulders there?
Yeah, staggered boulders.
or you could put boulders, but if there's a
Would you be
fence.
opposed to
No, that's
staggered
fine.
boulders?
Yeah, I mean, what we could do is we could leave the fence there if it's, the fence is 4 sides. We gotta take it down where it's in the way, but along the wetland, if it's in
If you have a
condition,
fence
we'll leave it.
along where the wetland is now, just leave it, and then that would suffice,
Yeah, that's fine.
I believe, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So this is like a 6 or 8 foot tall chain link fence?
It's definitely more than 6. It might be like 10. It's, like tennis court.
Yeah,
height, So
yeah,
that when you're in
10, yeah.
the ball, it stays in the area, yeah. I mean, it's
just-
tall, some of it has vegetation on it. I don't know how that looks in the wintertime when the leaves fall off, but I mean,
My only concern would be that it's a chain link fence, you said?
Yeah, chain link.
Somebody's gonna wanna take that down at some point. So they're fairly easy to take down. So I'd prefer boulders, to be honest, but
I would think boulders would look nicer
Yeah.
than some rusty chain link fence that's
Yeah.
10 feet tall.
yeah, we can,
Or even a nice
we can
black
do either one, doesn't matter.
Or a nice black chain. I'm sure what's there now is probably not gonna
Might
look
even-
nice next to the house, right?
Yeah. You might even be able to just take the chain link section out, cut the post down to 4 feet and put like a nice black fence in. But I guess if the commission just simply says a fence or boulders, I think either way.
We're
we
open
can
to either
work
one.
on.
We
Yeah.
could go post and rail fence, we could do boulders, whatever you guys wanna do, it's fine.
Okay. All right,
Did you get a chance to ask a question, Elea?
I don't think I had any.
Okay.
okay, you know,
Because I was just checking the deed, it is listed as 2 lots, so they're not 2 separate addresses. So you're going to talk to the assessors about getting the second address,
Yep.
so.
so how does that, we're all right issuing an order based on it's lot 17 and 19 as it's,
Yeah, it's going to overlap both of them. So
Okay.
it's just, so whenever one of them sells it, they're going to continually chase it, whereas we always like to issue them, for a separate address, but it doesn't impede us, it just impedes people down the road.
all right, so. we'll have
Yeah,
to
we're
deal
good.
with
Yeah, I
that.
mean,
And then, all right, so, are we all set? Everybody good?
Do you want to ask the applicant if they wanted to close it now?
I'm going
or-
to,
oh,
right?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get ahead of you. But I was just thinking with With the lot
I'm
issue.
going to ask them right now. Would you guys like to continue this, or would you like to close it?
I think we'd like to close and request an order of conditions, please.
Okay. You guys good? Okay. We close the hearing.
Would you like to leave it open for a special condition to perhaps the preference of the future homeowner of whatever kind of preferred fence they would like, or would you guys like to pick for them?
We're gonna pick for them,
Yeah.
and it will be either a fence or boulders. So
Yeah.
we're gonna discuss that before we write the order, and before we say, and we're gonna either pick a fence or a boulder or a combination thereof, so
All right,
Okay.
there you go.
sounds good.
Perfect.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're on to old and new business, so I guess we have one hearing. One order. So, would anybody like to, make a motion on 1719 Lanton Lane?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we issue an order of conditions for the demolition of an existing home tennis court, construction of a single-family home and associated grading, et cetera, at 1719 Lantern Lane, with the condition that a wetlands visual indication be made of some sort to be decided.
So maybe we can, probably the best thing to do is, since the chain link fence was too high, maybe to put a boulder line along the area where the chain link fence was.
So the only
that
problem I
route.
have with that is that people always want to dump their grass or their leaves, you know, over into where the wetlands would be. And if there's a fence, that would prevent it, and if there are boulders, they would just go in between the boulders, because they're human.
But the boulder can't be moved.
The
So it's
boulder cannot be
permanent.
moved.
It's a
This is
permanent
correct.
marking, and they know that they're not supposed to dump on the other side of the boulders. Whether they
They
do it or not, that becomes a Leah's
do
problem.
know.
So why don't we, since there is a fence there now,
Yes.
do we leave the existing fence and then supplement it with boulders in front of it? Would that suffice?
Like a 10-foot fence, or have them,
It's there, the fence.
Bring it
exists.
down.
It's, just leave the fence as is, and put some boulders in front of it along the fence line.
Yeah, I agree with Chris. I think there should be some sort of boulder, staggered boulders. Whether the fence comes down or not, I don't really care. I think it's probably gonna look ugly when they're building this new
I
house.
think the chain link, if I bought a new house and there were a really old chain link fence
Yeah,
from an
it'd be
old
the
tennis
first
court
thing
that
I
is gone, I'd be so unhappy about that.
Right.
Okay, so what would you,
I think
what would you like to do?
I would like to see staggered.
Boulders.
Okay,
Boulders.
My preference is boulders.
Fine.
Could you do vegetation between the boulders so that there was,
Right.
If people are dumping grass, I mean,
they're not gonna, yeah, they're not gonna not,
they're not gonna not do it.
yeah.
Yeah. It's more about making sure they don't encroach any further.
Right. I don't want anybody just building out their backyard back there. That's my bigger concern.
boulders.
I'm good, boulders.
Okay, so we'll
I think we
put
need a
more
second.
boulders.
We need a second.
Second.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Who seconded?
Diane.
Diane.
All right, so, discuss and sign certificates of compliance?
Okay, I have 3 to sign tonight. 8 Hobblebush Road was part of a subdivision that was built many, many years ago. There's been many partial certificates of compliance issued in the surrounding neighborhood. It is a well-stabilized home. Yeah, that was about it.
That's the only one?
That's just 8 Hobblebush Road.
Okay,
575 South Street is a more recent, it was completed in 2018, 2019. It is also well stabilized. They do have a chain link fence actually to prevent the expansion of their yard into the sloped area behind. Yeah, that one was also all set. And then 45 Main Street was the installation of some new wells for the town. I can't remember how many there were.
Just one.
Just one. And it is revegetated and happy.
Okay,
And that about covers it for
That's it.
for compliance. 197 Spring Street came before us last month. That was the construction of the chicken coop adjacent to the wetland. They will be filing an RDA with us
Right.
to see if they want to permit the chicken coop or,
Oh, that really nice chicken coop.
huh?
right.
That really nice chicken coop.
That really, really nice chicken coop.
Yeah, I'd live in that
The
chicken coop.
Coop to coop. And then 820 Main Street was, they've been in front of us for a couple of months. That was the overflow area that has not seeded itself. The applicants recommended that perhaps more substantial plantings be recommended by the commission than the conservation seed mix that has been planted so far. I don't know if you guys would agree to have a number of native shrubs installed so that we expedite the growing process before the snow sets in soon. I don't know if they're, where they're gonna, if they're, where or if they're going to find any blueberry bushes or something of the a similar variety this time of year, but
Where is 820 Main Street? It's closer to 290?
It's right opposite Dean Park, basically.
It's
Yes.
It's that house they cut off on the corner by. the
I can
house on
pull
the-
it up for you.
yeah.
the one that was just built?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Let me find a month where you can see what is going on back there. Too close, too close. Gosh almighty. Okay, so it has grown in a little bit since then. This was March, just so you can see where the outflow is. You can see that dark patch where a significant amount of sediment continues to. I think we had discussed planting more substantial shrubs along that outfall, just to slow that water down a little bit and catch some of that sediment, so it's not just continuing to wash out. But I think they would like a stronger recommendation on your behalf, that they plant some shrubs.
What would do well there? What would do well there?
I wonder if buttonbush would do well. Buttonbush, winterberry.
Very sturdy plant, yeah.
It is. It stands up to rabbit pruning. And
And
it's,
drought and water,
yes,
yeah.
yep.
Yeah, so this is a pretty, probably aggressively used detention area, because it catches water from the road, so there will be, salt and gross stuff,
So does
unfortunately,
Buttonbush handle.
hitting these
So
little
I have,
ladies.
I have personally had experience with buttonbush in a rain garden that accepts parking lot runoff,
Okay,
so salt.
yeah, so it would be able to
Taller,
stand up to it.
yeah.
Button bush. So you'd like to see some button bush? Were there any other potential options?
If it's upslope, I think winterberry holly might be good. And that offers winter interest.
Mm.
Okey-doke. I'll recommend some shrubs be planted then. Let's do that. And I think that covers it for certificates of compliance. Oh, I did want to note, for 36 Sewell Street, they will have a special public hearing in front of the planning board on November 2nd to discuss a common driveway for the 3 lots that are lots 2, 3, and 4, so that they can have that common driveway extended, because I think it was longer than common drive is supposed to be. So they should be back before us next month with the results of that and able to close out with us with their final determination of driveway length and everything else, so.
Okay. All right, so all set?
I believe so. Onward and forward to enforcement.
Enforcement orders, yep.
This was for Stoneland Road. parking area was constructed, adjacent to the BVW in the area. We have representatives here to tell you more.
Hello. First, we would like to.
What's your name?
Oh, I apologize. I'm Jonathan Scanlon. I'm with Allen Engineering. And this is Victor.
Victor De Rivera, owner.
So Victor owns this property here and this property over here. We have been previously in front of you guys to get him to be able to pave this road, add these two riprap swales to slow down the water from going into the wetlands. And he recently constructed a little parking area that was not proposed on the inside, closer to the wetland that runs just right here. So he did receive that cease and desist. So what we have proposed is to completely remove it, strip it down to the native soil, re-topsoil, and hydroseed it. Right now, this area is just a lawn area. And then there's a row of arborvitaes that run across here. We would just close it back up with some more arborvitaes. Bring it back to exactly how it looked before. Currently, he has set up the erosion control completely around it. That's here in orange. And once this restoration is complete, he would put another row of silt fence to kind of block off the area while that grass grows. And then he would then be able to start his proposed project, which he was approved for. That's not all I have for you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why? Why did you do that when you knew that you had an order to do some work there? You knew there was a
Right.
wetlands there, you knew the issue with the house
Yeah, it
across
was-
the river, the brook.
Certainly. It was definitely a mistake, and I apologize. I mean, I thought we had on the approval a curb cut. And the idea of that is, you know, I own a boat, and if I wanted to use it as a storage, just to put the trailer there, usually the trailer, all I did was I had the grass removed, we got down to the soil, and we put some gravel. It wasn't paved, we weren't looking to pave or anything, it was just gravel. So when I did it, foolish to think that it was part of, no different than landscaping, because it's just gravel, it's not. And that was the idea of doing it. It would just be easier to maintain the grass, not to have grass around the boat trail, it would just be easier to be gravel underneath it. And that was the mistake, but aside from that, I also have, my wife wasn't too happy with the way it looked, so.
Oh.
So I think it was gonna come out anyways and be brought back originally if we didn't have this issue regardless, but,
My one thing with planting of the grass, you'll be removing the border that's there as well?
oh yeah, everything's coming out,
Yep.
going back to full landscaping, just grass.
And
And
you'll plant sod there?
sod, yeah, we're
so-
bringing in sod.
We can change that to sod as opposed to hydroseed.
Yeah, we can bring in sod for sure, because we want to do it, the sooner the better, before the cold weather hits, and we can still get sod now. The other thing that he and I were just discussing, that original curb cut, I want to eliminate and just bring the curb straight across, so that there's no,
There were arborvitaes there before, though.
there were, we basically removed them and plant them, they're planted in that area, but we're just adding new ones to close out that area, remove the curb cut, just make it a straight line, that way it prevents anything else in the future.
And Leah, they can do this under the enforcement order, this work? Or do we need to have,
The removal?
I mean, can they restore it under? the
Yeah, that can be
enforcement
done, that can be done in
So we
enforcement. If
can-
they wanted to do the work, then we would recommend come back and amend the order, but.
order? But if we can do this
we can do
part
this.
under the enforcement and get this
then we'll
all
close
done
the
now?
orders. Yes, we can close the enforcement.
That would be, okay, Diane, you have any questions?
The only question that I would have is, if, sometimes arborvitae just don't make it.
Right. True.
So if that happens, will you be putting in new arborvitae or leaving the dead ones?
No, 100%. We already replaced, because we have it on both sides of the road, and a few of them didn't make it, and we already replaced them. So, yeah, they'll definitely be replaced.
Martha,
I'm set, thank you.
Jason,
Also,
Chris?
Yeah, no questions.
Andy?
So one of the questions, obviously, you remember when you were doing the road, is you were right on the threshold for a stormwater permit. So I'm going to assume in this land disturbance that you're over the 5,000 square feet now.
With with that parking area, we would.
So
be
you'll
over
need
the
to file a
5,000.
stormwater permit.
We did not. I spoke to Alay, or I apologize if I said your name
Aaliyah.
incorrectly. Ali. I spoke to her when we handed in the restoration plan, and she had stated that it wouldn't have to fall under the stormwater permit, just because we did. Our original one was close, and we do owe you per the order of conditions and as built to make sure we don't go over that threshold. With this new parking area, this restoration would push us over that. But when I talked to her, I thought we had said that we don't have to file for that.
No, 'cause
I-
I mean, yeah. Oh, go on.
I had recommended that the stormwater infrastructure be increased, because they were getting so close. And with this increased disturbance, if they weren't going to file for a stormwater permit, they did need to encounter that there would be more stormwater disturbance. So you should be beefing up your infrastructure a little bit to handle that.
So yeah, so if you're over the 5,000 square foot, you need a permit, because it's cumulative, it's not, you know,
Mm.
you can't segmentalize it to get around it. So if you disturb more than 5,000, or you will with the new project, then you'll need a stormwater permit.
Yeah, I apologize. I may not have been incorrect in how I was grouping all of those disturbances.
So you have to restore this, as you said, and then you'll have to file for a stormwater permit, because you disturbed it. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
they would push us out, because they were under the 5,000 square feet last time, but now this pushes it over, so it's.
So how does that work, Andy, if they put this back, does it still, it counts as disturbance, but
Yeah, so the stormwater they'll have to meet the stormwater standards now, so they'll have to do hydrology calculations, they'll have to meet the stormwater design standards, so we're looking for infiltration, recharge, all that, the whole shebang.
Or we could, let me ask you this, if I may. Sharon. So if we decide to just fix the issue and bring it back to its original state and not do anything to the road, I mean, the asphalt's crumbling around the edges. It's an old, I don't know how old that pavement is, but, you know, my goal was to improve the look and the road and the way it is and the way the water is running towards the other side of the road. You know, the water's just running towards the next house, the house next door, and there's major water going there. Going towards Lake Quisig is just the way the road was built, whenever that was built. So I was trying to obviously fix all of that, but, you know, if it becomes that big of an issue, can I just not do anything at this point? Just fix what's there and leave the road the way it is?
Yeah, I mean, you
If I
could just
decide to do that,
file for
okay.
certificate of compliance to say the work was never started,
Yeah,
to
exactly.
close it out, if you want,
Yep.
yeah.
it's up to you.
Okay, yeah.
You can think about it, you don't have to do that.
Yeah, we don't
now.
need to ask
As long as
today.
you fix this, and then.
Yeah,
you-
that's exactly
Before you
what we'll
move on to the next phase, you'd have to either not do it or file for a stormwater permit.
Right, okay,
Okay?
sounds good.
That's totally up to you.
Excellent.
So when could they start this, if this work?
Immediately?
As soon as
You
possible,
could
yeah.
start it,
Yeah,
so you
late
could
this
start this
season.
immediately and get this done, and then just let
Yeah.
Yeah.
engineering know.
Get some
Yeah,
things
we'll
down.
probably just leave it as it is, just,
Yeah.
you know, after that, okay.
So when you start this, just let engineering, let Aaliyah and Andrew know what you're doing. That way they know you're out there in case somebody calls, and
Right. Mhm.
you'll be all set.
I do have a question, if I may. If you decided just to do just the restoration, but also maybe just one side and stayed under that threshold, would that be appropriate?
Yeah, I mean, see, the trigger is 5,000 square feet, so
Okay,
it's.
so as long as we're under 5,000, we would provide you guys a new.
Well, what we
plan.
wouldn't want is you should do half and then come back in a year or two and say, oh, we're going to do
Correct,
the half.
yeah,
We'll-
it's-
We'll catch you there.
The bylaws,
Yeah. we'll-
pretty,
Okay, all right,
pretty,
Yeah, but that's fine, yeah.
all right, good.
Okay,
Excellent.
all right,
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, thank you.
for coming in.
Ladies?
Construction updates?
Yes. I have no thoughts in my brain. Can't remember what 21 Cedar Street was and what they wanted to do. See if I can find it.
Can we just skip to the next one, even though it's not?
Yeah, if you would like to skip to Dean Park, proposed improvements, I will figure out what. is-
Yep, so that's one for the DPW. Can I share now? All right.
Oh, yes.
Um,
Be able to.
Bear with me, it's been so long since I've had to share something. All right. Oh, that's why. So, some of you know, this is the existing driveway that goes down into Dean Park. So, this is Main Street here. This is the access driveway. This is that swale that runs down the side. Some of you may remember we got our wrist slapped by the Army Corps a few years ago for trying to do some slope stabilization in there. So, but one of the issues we've had is over the years that swale has started to fill in. When we get those big flash storms, it's basically filling up the swell, overtopping the road and actually washing out the parking lot. So we put a berm in, hoping that resolve the issue, but it's still overtopping when we get those bigger storms. So what we're looking to do is to put in a drainage bypass that will just take off some of the pressure when we do those, when we get those bigger storms. So we'll basically drop a manhole on the existing culvert in the driveway and then run down the driveway and then tie back into it. Actually, I can zoom in a
Is
little
the
bit.
stormwater?
There we go. And then we would tie back into it. And then this drains into what, we've always thought of it as a stormwater forebay. We can't find any records on it, but it's built like a forebay. It's got sediment in it. So as part of the work, we'd like to go in there. We went out there today, and it's got about 12 inches of silt in the bottom of it. So we would like to turn it into a proper formal forebay and clean it out and put in a filter berm across it so we get some more pre-treatment in the drain. So, it's technically all exempt under stormwater drainage, but I just wanted to make the commission aware of it, that we're gonna probably put this out in the bid next year and hopefully get this done so it doesn't keep washing out the field.
So will you dig up the entire road going down?
Well, we'll have to trench it a little bit, so we'll have to coordinate a little bit. I mean, luckily there is access,
From the other side,
but
yeah.
it's gonna take some coordination. There's no good way to do it, but
Okay.
yeah, we will have to shut down access. Hopefully it's not a big project.
Right.
There's no utilities in that driveway, so it's just putting pipe in. But the big issue is while we're doing that, do we want to look at, reestablishing this forebay? Because that's the biggest thing we just wanted to talk to you about. So that was really it. So this will be coming next year, but just wanted to run it. And then as part of the work that we promised the Army Corps we'd do, we said we would do some grading along here, to put in some more flood storage, which at this point we may not need to do it if we've got the bypass. And then over by the cobblestone building, water washes across there. That was another area that said we'd have to mitigate. So I'll put a formal plan and we'll submit next year, but just wanted to just give you an update on it, so.
When is construction proposed?
Well, we're going out to bid probably.
Season or?
I don't know, we'll probably try and, there is no off-season per se. We'll have to talk to Parks and Rec and see when's the worst time to, not the worst time to do it, but it's like Maple Ave Park, which,
January is pretty.
yeah, well, there's no frozen. I mean, it's not in the street, so we could do it in January, but we don't really be digging in the frost.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll figure it out next year, but it's gonna be an inconvenience for a short time, but we think hopefully it will stop that. It'll hopefully protect that swale and stop it overtopping, which is becoming more and more of an issue, so. That's.
It's for the baseball players that it's a problem.
It is actually, because they spend a lot of money to fix that field, and it's just an inconvenience, because it washes out the whole road, and eventually it's gonna wash the road out, and then we've gotta fix that. So we can't, obviously, as we know now, go in there and do anything to the swale, so we figured we'd try and take the pressure off upstream and bypass it when we get those big storms, so. All right?
Any other
Should keep track of
construction
how much-
updates, Maple Ave?
Mitigation.
So
Is it
Is
21
this
Cedar
climate
Road was
mitigation?
a-
This is climate
This is climate mitigation.
It could be, essentially, yes, yeah.
Yes, because it is more precipitation
Yeah, we are getting those 100-year storms more often than every 100 years.
every 37 years on
Yes,
average.
and rainfall intensity.
Since I was born, precipitation has increased by 55% during heavy storms. So that's what this is. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, it maybe happened once a year. Now it's happening 3 or 4 times a year.
so that when it, when it is done, I would hope that it would be done in such a way that as rain continues to get even heavier over time, it would still work for that.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah, so we've oversized the pipe, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna put in basically a cap in the existing culvert and just throttle it back, so we can always pull that cap out and make it, we can adjust it as we need to. But yeah, that pipe's big enough to handle that. I think the 100-year storm is what we sized it for.
Because I have very strong memories of returning from work. I work in Northborough and watching haystacks of water come up out of storm sewers, manholes on Main Street. The water coming up like haystacks, and everyone else having to drive around the haystacks, and that was within the past 10 years. And I keep hoping when they repaired that, did they repair it for the rain of the day, or did they repair it thinking 50 years down the road?
They probably did not repair it, yeah. I
Right.
mean, historically, they're designed for a 25-year storm, but that's clearly not really gonna work these days.
No.
Start thinking about making them bigger. But
Yes,
that's what most drainage system is designed, but I think
yes.
it's hard to reinvent the wheel, I think.
There will be more water.
We'll have water.
Remember which one it is?
All of
I
us.
did remember what they were,
If the-
but I think they require the humans that represent them to tell us about them.
Cedar Road?
Yes, yeah, that was an order of conditions that came before us. They are trying to, it was an addition on a home. They're trying to refinance the house or something, and we're trying to figure out what to, if they needed to issue, they have not completed the work. They've installed their boulder line, but they have not done any of the addition. They haven't done any of the earthwork for that. So they were trying to figure out if they wanted to issue a certificate of compliance or amend it, or how they should do that. But they are not here to figure it out with you, so. And then 502 Lake Street is there's an existing single-family home on the property. They would like to construct a garage there. It's within, the entire property is within the 200-foot riverfront area. So the garage would be in the outer riparian zone, and would be a substantial addition to the home. So, they were also trying to figure out what they wanted to file with us. But they're also not here, so.
And this would be not under the new bylaws.
That stuff would be under the new bylaw, yes. This would just be them figuring out what they would like to file with us, and then any proposal or any application submitted at this point in time would be subject to the bylaw. So the postponed hearing, at 779 Hartford Turnpike, that will be subject to the bylaw next month. So they had substantial things that they needed to add to their application before they could meet the bylaw requirements and just come before us at all. And then 100 and 150 Maple Avenue is the police station, obviously. They have installed several detention basins, and the planting plan is not lining up with what they had proposed, and how they're working. So they'll come before us next month to,
Yeah, so
Discuss?
basically the rain garden in the front, when they came to plant them, there's water in the bottom, it's high groundwater, or it's just poor soil, so the landscaper was saying this, physically you can't get the plants in, and B, they're probably not gonna survive, so we're like, well, this is our showboat, learning curve for BMPs, so we'd like to, no, we didn't want to just decide for ourselves to change it, say, well, come back to the commission and show us what you want to change for plants, and we'll do it that way, but.
yeah. We
So-
wanted to avoid Phragmite growing in there and
Yeah.
potentially being an
We've already
invasive
got Phragmites
species.
again.
and-
Please.
I know when we approved that order, there was much discussion about the basins and the elevations, so will you be able to check the elevations and ensure that they were constructed as presented?
We don't have the as-bills, but yeah, I was reaching out to find out when we would get the as-bills.
Because that was a very important aspect of what
Well,
we
yeah,
discussed.
you have to raise the whole site because the groundwater was a lot higher,
Right,
yeah.
so I'm just hoping that they did this, construct that the way they
It
would.
looks right, I think the groundwater's a little deeper over there. It's also just the soils are not, they're tight soils, so they're not draining, so it's more about the plant species and what they put in, and we don't wanna We don't want to just.
No,
wait till
correct.
anyway. And then we also got the contractors designing us these colored boards, for informational boards that we're gonna put by them, that kind of, educational outreach for staff, so we wanna
Well,
make
that's a
sure.
very important aspect of that.
Yes,
so-
it's right in front of town hall too, so we wanna make sure it's.
Well, as long as they give us the information and when they come in to say that they were in fact constructed to what the order stated,
Mhm.
we'd like to know that.
Yeah, I did reach out to see when we get the as-built, because I mean, they're substantially complete at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Some striping to do, but I think at this
Mhm.
point, it's pretty much all done.
Okay.
Can I ask a real dumb question about those information boards? Are they gonna be facing the road, or are they gonna be angled?
We
So
would,
that people can read them as they drive?
we would probably put it, because they've got a sidewalk that goes right in front
Yeah.
of it, so our intention would be put it right on the sidewalk, so people could.
And
sit
so
there.
it'll
Well, these are like
face
little,
traffic.
these are like substantial pieces of information. They're not
did you
gonna
have
be, you don't read while you drive. This is
Oh,
like
no, this is for
reading.
people sitting there and walking.
Yeah, this is like people wandering through the park, wanting to learn more
Oh.
about stormwater detention basins and infiltration gardens.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
they're like, like
Are we
signs
size
that
on the
you
board
would see.
size? They're probably like plan size, maybe a little big.
Yeah, let me see
We've
if I
had them
can pull it up.
designed, I don't know if we can pull it up quickly, but it's more an education, because it helps us for our stormwater
Yeah.
permitting too.
So, may I?
Absolutely.
You indicated that the soils weren't draining. It was very tight soils. Have they installed soil conditions in the basins to allow draining? Is it the subsoil that's not allowing draining?
It's the
or-
subsoil, and unfortunately, because they're tying into the existing drainage in the parking lot. Typically, you would put an under drain underneath it to wick that last bit of water away, but they just physically can't make the connection because of the penetration. So this is basically the information boards that are gonna be going, but,
Oh, wow.
so yeah, I mean, they could probably answer the questions better than I could when they're gonna come in next month. They were to come in tonight, but they just weren't ready, and we're like, well, we'll just give you an update, and they'll come in next month, and we're gonna have the LA and the GC and the project architect come in, and they might want to do it remotely, because they're all fairly distant, but I assume we can make that work.
Yeah, we spent a couple months making some of our stormwater literature a little more accessible to a variety of ages and audiences, and then detailing what the two kinds of infiltration units on site are. So there's the infiltration chamber and then the retention basin, and what they are and how they work, and where they are on site with a little map of the site. Yeah.
Very good. That's gonna be great.
So we need a nice basin to put next to it.
Yes,
You do.
We don't be staring.
Absolutely.
We don't be staring at Phragmites while they're reading the board, so.
No.
Anything else?
That's all I got.
I make the motion
All
to
of my
adjourn.
notes.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Ooh, we're gonna-